Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the podcast, The Highguy's Joints of View. My name is Chris, the Highguy Jacobs. And on today's episode, being number 2, we are going to take the opportunity to introduce you to who I think is my better half, the woman who allows me to be the man I am today and pushes me to be my best, the one and only...
I did a blinker and I wasn't prepared for it. Sorry. Good. Not okay. I'm good now. I'm good.
Kayla, the Mrs. Jacobs. How are you doing, Kayla? Welcome to the podcast.
I took a blinker and I was not prepared for it.
So for any of you who don't know, a blinker is when you pull on your pendulum, until the light blinks. So however long that is, could be 15 seconds, 20 seconds pull, you're going on a ride. She just did that without telling herself.
Yeah. Didn't prepare myself mentally for it. When you don't prepare yourself mentally for one like that, it's a little rough.
Well, that being said, Kayla, the missus. First off, where do you get the missus from?
It started with you and your gaming. When he first started, we got married and he first started getting into more gaming, he'd always tell his people on Discord, I'm gonna go see the missus or the wife. Go see the wife.
My wife.
My wife.
And then everyone started hitting me with my wife, and then I decided to not do that anymore, and I just call her the missus. So if I'm going for hoots, it's with the missus.
If I have to go do something, it's for the missus.
It's for the missus. She is my missus. And all of our merchandise will say that too, the missus. So you'll have the Highguy and the missus merch. You can get some for your partner. Now, on today's podcast, we're going to do an introduction, because she is in fact my better half, and I think wholeheartedly she is the individual in my life that allows me to be myself the best. So let's talk first and foremost a little bit about you. Yes, we need to know a little bit about you.
I am not very excited.
Of course you are.
I've been called the gypsy because I've moved a lot. But,
a gypsy?
You know, yeah.
Okay. Let me ask you a couple questions so we can get a little bit to know about you and let the listeners connect with you a little bit, okay?
Yeah.
First and foremost, where did you grow up?
I grew up in Alberta in a small town, so I've never really been a big city person.
Okay.
I've never lived in a big city
of
any kind.
Well, what happened?
No, that's not true. That's not true. That's not true. That's not true.
I was just about to fact check my own wife. Wait a second.
Until I got married.
Not only that.
Until I got married.
You also lived in Vancouver, though. Let's be honest.
Yeah.
You lived in Vancouver for how long? And what were you doing in Vancouver?
I went to pastry school.
Pastry school?
Yes.
So you were studying to be a pastry chef?
Yes. And I lived in Vancouver. It was a huge adjustment, that's for sure, from a small town to a big city like that.
Yeah, I can see that being the case.
I was not prepared for that.
What was one of the things that you were looking forward to the most when you went out there?
Run away from my trauma.
Oh. So you went to Vancouver to get as far away from your trauma as you could?
100%.
Is that why you chose Vancouver?
Yeah, because it was the furthest I could get away from all of it and still be able to do what I wanted to do. I wanted to get out of where I was so bad that I had been accepted a year early to culinary school. So by the time I started grade 12, I was already accepted into a second.
So if you don't mind me asking, without going into too many details, What was it that drove you away from home?
My family.
You just had
Mostly my mother.
your mom? Your
Yeah.
mom, as we say?
She doesn't deserve that title. Like, at all.
No, I get it.
In any shape or form.
There's a lot of history there, and on a nice Friday afternoon with a nice bourbon in hand, I'm sure we can talk about them later.
No, I'd have to get that. Remember that joint that we got?
Which one?
Where it had the big white on the end. It was like a 2-gram joint,
Uh-huh.
but it was like infused and shit.
Uh-huh.
That's what we.
Yeah, we would need a big fat, or I'll roll us up like a 2 Skinner blunt.
Nah. That
A
one
nice
was
big
good.
fat 2 Skinner blunt. I think that'd be a good one too.
Yeah.
Haven't done one of those in a while.
Yeah, we haven't. No, we haven't done one in a very long time since we lived in Edmonton.
Yeah,
Probably.
But anyways, let's go back to Vancouver. What did you like about Vancouver, the city? Because that's a pretty big, like, it's a cultural spot. I mean, if you look in Canada, for example, Vancouver, British Columbia, and pretty much all to the west is seen to be very progressive. It's more of a progressive province, anyways, BC. They've got, for example, medicinal mushroom stores. They've got cannabis stores. BC cannabis, BC bud is seen to be world renowned. There's lots of, reasons why the culture in BC, in Vancouver, is a lot different than the rest of Canada.
It was.
So what did you like about it?
The one place I lived at, renting, I was like 2 blocks from the beach. That was the only thing. I hated Vancouver.
Really?
Oh, yeah.
What about the people?
They were rude.
Really?
Oh, yeah. They were rude. They, not your typical, what people would consider Canadian. Truthfully, Vancouver's a bunch of snobs.
Wow. Coming out swinging. Yeah. Fight me in the comments. I've never been there personally, but no, it is definitely that's
fight you on that.
That's unfortunate to hear. But it is what it is.
Oh, sorry. One good thing about it was if I needed to get anywhere, it was quicker to take the bus.
Yeah, public transit's probably
Their public transit was awesome. I can give them props to that. But that's about it.
Well, that, and you got to experience some of, the culinary world, eh?
Yeah, I worked at a bunch of, high-end restaurants in Vancouver.
Who did you work with?
A lot of people. Let's see. I worked at Rob Feeney's restaurant for a bit. I worked under Daniel Ballou. Oh, man. And then there was, a couple other,
So you've had some experience with some of the
3-star restaurants, and
so you've had some experience with some of the Canada's top chefs, anyways.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, Daniel Ballou is American.
Oh, is he?
Yeah.
Oh.
Rob Feeney's Canadian.
Oh, okay.
He was the first Iron Chef.
Rob Feeney?
Yeah.
Really?
Yeah.
Huh. You learn something new every day.
First Canadian Iron Chef.
Huh.
So that was about it.
So you went there to study culinary arts. You were there for pastry chefs.
Yes.
Right, for pastries. Now, I know from experience, as you can tell, that your pastries are pretty darn delicious. There's a lot of situations where we end up making, especially in our household now, we end up baking a lot. Bread, focaccia, cinnamon rolls, all that kind of stuff we have pretty regularly. But I've also noticed that you haven't been, you've moved away from that baking aspect. We've gone into a more of a homesteading, kind of hobby farming, things like that. Right? Preserving. And it's a totally different prospect to the culinary arts and, cake design, which is kind of what you had originally planned to do.
Yeah. I working in all the restaurants, it was just not for me.
No?
Not my thing. Even when we got married, we were running a restaurant, and it was rough on both of us.
Mm-hmm.
And I just found it's not a place that I want to be in anymore. I'll bake with the kids and do things around the house and stuff, but I have no desire to do it professionally.
Not in the industry, hey?
No.
Yeah. I can appreciate that. There's a whole different ball game. It's a whole different stress, environment that you're in.
Well, pastries is a lot more than just throwing some stuff in a pan like you do when you're doing the culinary arts.
Mm-hmm.
But with pastry, everything has to be down to the like
Specific
grams,
gram, yeah,
very specific. And depending on where you live, that also affects your ingredients. Like when we were in Vancouver, one of our units was sugar work, and because it's so humid there and it gets so hot, that our sugar work would be like melted and sticky,
Yeah,
and gross, and it was so hard to work with because it just had no time to actually like dry and harden.
well, I hear that's the same thing when it talks about baking at different temperature or different altitudes, for
That's
example.
what I mean. Like
is going to have different
altitudes is going to affect it, so you have to adjust your liquid / flour. Like my bread recipe, I have a base of it, but because it's always changing here, I just go by like feel, because at the end of the day, it's gonna vary depending on where you live. Like my recipes for Vancouver happen very differently here than they did there.
Yeah, like proofing, baking, things like that. Now, this is a cannabis podcast, and we're talking about baked goods, which is fine.
I make some pretty good edibles.
I was going to mention, which is fine because there's a huge crossover in that side. But I'm really kind of curious when it was that you started to introduce cannabis into your life. Like, were you consuming it a lot beforehand? Did it happen a lot more after you married me? Like, when did you start to get more involved in cannabis?
I tried a little bit in Vancouver. Mm-hmm. And then when I moved to Saskatchewan here, I started doing electrical.
Right.
And then I was getting into it a little bit with my cousin, but I didn't really get into anything until the other died. That's why I wasn't as loud for a second there. I'm really sorry, guys, but I was holding in a cough.
Unfortunately,
I have crappy lungs.
I wouldn't call them crappy lungs. I just think it's, it's concentrated THC, and unfortunately, it's an irritant in the lungs. It's an oil-based substance. It's oily. It's gonna bind to the inside, becomes an irritant. So unfortunately, coughing is a normal thing.
I cough worse when I smoke flower. So just no.
That's true. She does.
Like way worse.
And just for your information, this is just a THC concentrate. It's just a high THC. What do they call it?
It's a grab bag. They call it grab bag, but it's whatever.
It's a high THC concentrate.
Yeah.
So it's like 85 or 95%, something like that.
But yeah, no, I didn't get into really smoking until we got together. And then that's when it got more, because it was actually helping me. And that's when we've just kind of kept it in my life anyways, because it helps me. You've always smoked, so.
Yeah, as I've mentioned before, I started at a very young age. It's been a huge part of my life. For a large percentage of it, I have highly obsessed about it. Looked into it, researched it, learned about it, because at the end of the day, I truly believe it's an underutilized plant. It's something that has a ton of potential that we don't use a lot of. It's still kind of shaded because of the 1950s and 1960s. There's a huge amount of, what's the word? No, it's a word that starts with C, controversy.
Yeah.
There's a ton of controversy around it for a lot of reasons. The way that it's equated to alcohol, for example, like we were talking previously, there's a huge stigma around women, for example, who drink wine versus women who have a joint to help them parent, or after a hard day, something like that. There's a huge stigma around CannaMoms versus...
What's accepted is, I need a glass of wine, but...
Yes.
Mama needs a joint, or whatever.
Is stigmatized.
You're considered a bad mom.
Right. So there's a huge controversy around that.
Instantly, even though you've proven time after time that it has helped you in a positive way to become a better mom. Unlike alcohol, which can have a higher negative effect than cannabis. Like when you have a glass of wine, when I have a glass of wine, I don't want to do anything. I just want to sit there and enjoy my wine. But when I have a dab or whatever, I'm doing cleaning the house. I'm outside fencing with the animals.
Yeah,
Like,
depending on the strain, a lot of it can be
doing things with
motivational.
the kids and stuff.
Yeah.
Right? And if I were to have a drink, it would not be the same.
And I think that there's a couple of conversations about that. One of it comes down to the fact that cannabis is very individual, so it's based on the individual user, right? Each person experiences it different. Number two, there are thousands of strains, and what I believe most people don't understand is that each strain has its own like keen attributes and effects. So it's not just about THC, it's not just about CBD, it's not just about the terpenes or the cannabinoids. It's how they all work together, and each strain effectively has its own use. Now, yes, some of the, a lot of strains will have the same use. Sativas, for example, are naturally uplifting. Indicas are naturally sedative. So you have those types of things. Typically, indicas will make you more lethargic or more either sleepy, tired.
And then there's me who uses
relaxed
it because my body hurts all the time.
Yeah, for pain, things like that. Or there's a lot of people who will use indicas as a way to help them trigger more relaxed effects, in the sense of, let's say they want to do puzzling, or they want to write music, or they want to write stories, or they do that, any of that kind of stuff. Because it's more of a mental game and less of a physical game, they might take an indica. Or on the flip side, they'll take a sativa if they're going golfing, or they're going hunting, or they're going fishing, or something like that. They'll take a sativa to help them kind of motivate. So that's all based on the individual strains. And I think there's a ton of information that needs to come out on those strains, and we need to put a lot more research into it, so that we can start to change that stigma. Because just like we have a CannaMom who does really well, right, smoking a joint and continuing on her day, as much as we respect a mother drinking a glass of wine and doing the same thing. I mean, there should be an equality, and there really isn't. And I think a lot of that comes down to the current government's ideas of it. And I say the current government because that's always going to change. But if we look in Canada, for example, where we live, where cannabis is federally legal, the regulations are not designed in a way to benefit Canadians. It's designed in a way to prevent access to kids. Now, let me ask you a question. If you look at the regulations that are out there now, do you think they've done well at limiting access to children?
Well, for cannabis, a little bit, but for other drugs, no.
Okay.
But
if we look at just cannabis, do you think that the regulations and laws that they've put out limit access to children?
No. They're going to find it. If they want to find it, they're going to find it.
Not to mention, just like alcohol, a lot of this situation is not them going into a store, it's someone else purchasing it for them.
Yeah.
So all of these regulations and laws in regards to advertising, in regards to, funding, in regards to package policies, in regards to concentration amounts, in my opinion, and the opinion of the community, a lot of those things need to change.
And because it's so much cheaper to get it through the black market, that there's a dealer on every other corner. They can just go up and be like, hey, can I have a bag of weed? I'll be like, okay. So
the question then becomes, is it better to buy from the black market or from the legal market? And I guess that comes down to two schools, right? You're either going to look at the one that's going to be cost over anything else, which, I mean, as long as you trust your dealer is fine. And the other situation is going to be regulation. I know, for example, that the stuff that comes from the store is not necessarily, yes, it's going to be clean. It's not going to be cut with anything or mixed with anything or sprayed with anything.
But that doesn't mean it hasn't been flushed proper. It hasn't been cured proper.
Or it hasn't been sitting in the bag for 2 years.
Yes, we've gotten a lot of packages that were made a year and a half, 2 years ago.
Yeah, and if they're packaged that long ago, even a sativa, what you have to understand is this is effectively a living plant. As time goes on, as time simply progresses, things change within the plant. THCA will turn into CBN, okay? As time progresses, so this is why older cannabis not only is a little harsher typically, but is far more sedative. Because CBN is a cannabinoid that triggers deep levels of sleep, okay? As preliminary studies show anyways, that it's linked to lower levels of sleep, better quality sleep, things like that. But that's a simple progress of time. The older the weed is, the more CBN cannabinoids are present inside of that. So if you have something, if you're buying a sativa that was packaged 2 years ago, it's no longer going to be that sativa effect that you're looking for.
And it's going to be powdery as fuck.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Like,
typically,
we've learned a kind of a trick to bring back our dry weed by throwing like an apple peel or an orange peel or something in there to help bring some moisture back in.
Slice
but
of bread.
even then, like, you still don't get the original effects of that bud because it's sat there for 2 years and just dry.
And it's
it
changed.
May not be there may be like an oxygen absorber in there, like what all of them do, but when it gets past that point, the oxygen absorber is useless.
Yeah, those
because it's an
packets.
Oxygen absorber.
Well, it's just those things where it's like I look at them and I'm if you're packaging me and selling me a product, I want to make sure that that product is healthy. I want to make sure that that product is right, and I want to make sure that the product is fresh. At least I know from my guy on the street, my stuff is going to be pretty fresh because he re-ups pretty often. And that stuff doesn't sit very long. It's not going to sit packaged on a shelf for 2 years. At worst, it's going to be maybe a couple of months. Now, yes, it's not going to be stored the same way, so I'm getting it in a baggie versus a nice prime package with details on it. But now you're asking yourself,
doesn't matter.
Well, that you're asking yourself what's more important? What is a better way to support the culture? In my opinion, it all comes down to the product itself. Who's going to provide me the best product? Yeah. That's where I'm going.
Yeah.
And right now, Canadian market is a little hit and miss, especially depending on the dispensary you go to.
Yes. Very dependent on that as well, depending on what you can get, the price, the quality. Some of the really small ones, they generally don't sell a ton of product, and so their product is generally older than some of the bigger stores are.
Well, not only that, but we've discovered in small towns they take the capability to charge what they want to a new level. The dispensary here in our town, for example, is almost twice as expensive as any other dispensary that you would go to. And her reasoning for doing that is because she can, which is pretty in my opinion, as part of the culture, pretty counterproductive. Everything I do in this culture is about making it more accessible and understanding and things like that. And if I could give the stuff away, I would. I honestly believe that cannabis should be free because of how easily it's available, how easily it's accessible, and how bountifully effective it is with so many uses, so many capabilities. It's definitely one of those things that I think more people need to use in their life. And I don't mean go out and get high. Like, that's not what I'm saying.
There's so many different ways to consume cannabis and not have that quote unquote psychedelic effect that everybody's convinced that you get when you smoke or take an edible or anything like that. Like, everything is different and everything is going to affect you differently. I've used suppositories, I've used topicals, I've done edibles, I've done flour and concentrates. Like, I've tried a whole bunch of different things.
They got bath bombs now, for Christ's sake.
Yeah, I've done a bath bomb too. Like, that wasn't bad, but I hate baths, so that was not. But it was great.
There's lotions, creams, oils. Yeah. I mean, this is all stuff that you
pills that you can take. And everyone's always worried about the THC. Oh, the THC. I want as high as it possibly can be. You don't always want that.
Well, and right? That's what we're saying, right? It's not just about getting high. Yeah. Like I said, there's hundreds of different cannabinoids, and a lot of them aren't psychotropic. They don't cause psychedelic effects. They don't cause the high effect. If you look at CBD, for example, CBD is non-psychotropic.
Yeah.
It doesn't get you high, but there's tons of benefits to taking it. Joint pain, inflammation.
That's what I use during the day is a higher CBD and all of that versus like a high THC.
Right. So So having those cannabinoids, for example, and focusing on their use, or like I said, looking at the other cannabinoids, like I'll give you another one, CBG, cannabigerol. Cannabigerol is another cannabinoid that has been shown to be naturally uplifting, naturally motivational, and non-psychotropic. So if you have edibles, for example, that are CBG edibles or CBN edibles, these are all non-psychotropic cannabinoids.
This is why what he knows. I'm just here for the laughs, so he can make fun of me. He's the one that's here to ramble on about all these different things.
I told you, I'm obsessed. Okay.
He can have an answer for almost anything.
Obsessed.
And I'll just interrupt him and make funny comments. Half the time, I don't know what he's talking about.
But the purpose is the same. Yes, THC gets you high. Yes, it binds to the CB1 receptors in your brain. Yes, it gets you intoxicated. And yes, that can lead to certain funny effects, right? You're gonna laugh at things. You might be a little bit sedative. You might be locked to your couch. You might
hyper focus.
Yeah, you make funny connections.
That was like me the other day. I started cleaning a little bit. Next thing I know, I was doing the whole kitchen.
And I'll tell you very quickly, if you're not used to it, I wouldn't suggest smoking it and trying to go do anything. Right? No. Don't get high and go to work.
Never get high and go to work.
Right? Don't get high and drive. Things like that. Totally understandable. But for users like myself, I don't get high anymore. Right? I don't smoke to get high anymore. I smoke just to be able to maintain. Because like I said, I deal with ADHD. And ADHD is one of those things where it's a consistent draw all the time. There's consistent sound, consistent noise. My brain doesn't shut off.
It just helps lower the noise a little bit. Even though we're on medications and stuff.
It just turns the dial.
Just the little bit that we both need to just kind of lower the... Hi, Zeus. Lower the sound a bit in our brains because it's pretty noisy in there.
So it's not about getting high anymore.
It's not about getting high. It's not about, melting into the couch every night. It's not about that for us. Anyways, it's our daily thing. It is what we take from the time we get up to the time we go to bed in different forms.
Throughout the day.
Yep. And it's not like we're sitting here smoking bowl after bowl after bowl or dab after dab. We do maybe 2 bowls each, and they're little bowls. They're little again, one Hooters.
It's all individual of the day. It depends on what strains we have. It depends on what we're planning to do today. It depends on how much driving we have to do, when that driving has to happen. How much
labor I have to do.
Right. It's all specific, and this is my point. This is how cannabis should be used. There are so many different pathways. We smoke sativas in the morning, but specific strains that focus on specific things.
And they're usually higher CBD.
Right? Higher CBD, lower THC, things like that. If you can get specific cannabinoid strains, which are available now, or edibles, which are available now, you'll use those as well.
Yep.
And there's a huge efficiency to what you... So, because there's so much variety, it allows for so much customization to what you need. And it's not like alcohol where every drink gets you drunk. Do you know what I mean? Some drinks, some people get angry when they drink tequila, for example, or some people get, belligerent when they drink whiskey or something. But almost across the board, drinking is drinking. You're going to get drunk and the effect is the same. I've always noticed if I drink beer and get drunk, it's the same as if I drink whiskey and get drunk, I'm still drunk. But if I smoke a sativa and if I smoke an indica, it's a totally different high.
Yeah.
And this is something that people need to understand. There's such a difference between cannabis and alcohol, and we're culturally okay with alcohol, and yet there's such a stigma behind cannabis.
Yeah. And that's where the whole CannaMom comes in too. Again, if they're not my friends, I don't hide that I'm part of the community. Three quarters of my clothes and the clothes that I make are cannabis related. And so a lot of people know in the community that I am a CannaMama. And so they don't really notice my wear anymore because more of the moms in our community are slowly making their way out and showing that they're part of the community because sometimes it just takes one person to change someone's mind about something.
Yep.
Right? Like, and when he worked at the shop that was here, he knew everybody in town, pretty much, that came in. And some people would come in just for him. And so I think sometimes it just takes one or two people to really just change a community's view on things and become more open or share more. Because this is a pretty snooty-tooty town, usually.
Well, I think the difference is that the town itself is a lot younger than it used to be.
Yes.
Right? And now because we have a lot younger people moving into the area, their perspective on it is a little different. Right? So that's allowing that stigma to change a little bit. You know, the town isn't full of 50, 60, 70-year-olds anymore. It's 30s, 40s, and 50s now.
And even some of the older generation is coming out more and...
Well, they should.
It's legalized. It's no different than having a drink.
Well, not only that, but I'm sorry, but it's great for your joints. My joints are already 80, and if I didn't have this, I don't know what I would do, man. I'm telling you.
My joints are right there with you.
Like, my joints are already 80. If y'all didn't know, I also used to backyard wrestle. My knees are messed.
And again, topicals.
Yep.
Right? I would use it for my pain.
Joints, pains.
You know, headaches.
Yep. We have a headache salve we use. Every time you get a headache, you rub some into your temples. And it does really well. It's surprising how... It
definitely helps, like, lower the pain.
Yeah,
it doesn't make it go away.
Of course not.
Like, it's not still have a little bit, but
it's not
just
magic.
It makes it manageable. Like, it's not just a magic pill.
Yeah. It's not like Tylenol where,
give it 20 minutes and you'll be like, you won't feel anything.
Yeah.
But with topicals, you don't get that. Like, especially around the head as well. Like, everyone's, your brain, it's so close to your brain. It's not going into your brain, absorbing into your brain. It's absorbing into your skin.
And I know that sounds weird, folks, but let's understand,
skin.
Humans are stupid. Humans are stupid.
And so before it can do anything, it's always absorbed into the skin. And a lot of them have higher CBDs than THC because you don't always need the THC for the pain.
Well, a lot of that
also
comes...
depending on, like, what you get for the cannabinoids and everything.
A lot of that comes down to where the receptors for cannabis in your body are. We have a natural cannabinoid system. It's called the endocannabinoid system within our body. Right? So we already have receptors naturally built to accept these cannabinoids. All right? So now we can already talk about how this is... If we're talking about a design in the world... These are literally perfectly designed receptors to bind to CB, like the CBD, CBN cannabinoids. They're already there.
They'll hook onto what they need to.
But there's two specific types. You've got CB1 receptors and CB2 receptors. CB1 receptors reside in the brain. CB2 receptors reside all throughout the body. Right? In your skin, in your
Excuse me.
Throughout your digestive system, like it's a lot throughout everywhere else, right? So CB1 receptors are typically what gets you high. THC binds to the CB1 receptors. CBD binds to the CB2 receptors, which is typically everywhere else. Which is why CBD is so good for inflammation, for your joints, for digestion, for a lot of different things throughout the body because it binds to those receptors in the body. So if you're using it in your skin, for example, you're getting it directly to those receptors that need it the most. And if you have a sore joint, if you have, sore muscles, you got like a rash, you've got anything like that kind of stuff, CBD creams can be very, very effective for those treatments. And if you haven't tried them before, go out and try them. You'd be surprised. You're not going to get high.
Because you're not ingesting it.
Right. And you wouldn't want to ingest the cream anyways.
That'd be really gross.
This is organic.
Kids back in the day used to eat Tide Pods, so I wouldn't be surprised if someone tried to eat like
Don't remind us about
cream.
The Tide Pod craze.
That was really bad.
Humanity was like, Tide Pods.
Yeah.
Candy.
Yum. Let's do the Tide Pod challenge. But it definitely affects things differently and helps people in different ways. I know for me, I take it a lot to eat because if I don't eat. I'll go all day without eating and just live on coffee and hoots. But certain ones, it just clicks and I'm like, I'm hungry, I need to eat now, and that's another reason why I've been able to gain weight like I have.
Put some of that weight back on.
Yeah, I was 95 pounds up until we had kids, yeah.
Pretty much like 6 or 7
years
ago.
The little one. When we had the little one.
Things started to change.
And I started to gain weight.
I think you started to gain weight after your hysterectomy. Yeah. That's when it really happened.
Yeah. Yeah, like I still fluctuated and everything, but now my system's become a normal cycle, and it's helped me gain the weight because I'm eating more than I used to, and that's helping.
I don't need a vasectomy.
I don't know why.
I don't need a vasectomy. I don't need a vasectomy. That makes me happy. It makes me happy. You have to understand that makes me happy.
It makes most men happy.
Yeah.
When I don't have to.
When I don't have to have stuff shoved in my balls.
You can just use it for pain medication when you do go get a vasectomy.
What do you mean when I do go get a vasectomy?
No, I'm talking to the people.
Okay. When you guys go get one. Because I don't need one.
Whomever goes and gets one. Try some topicals or edibles. Help you through that poor suffering.
I cannot imagine. I don't want to imagine. And I'm not going to imagine.
You can have a baby instead.
Nope, not doing that either. Nope, not doing that either. So let's get back here a little bit. We've segued a lot. This ADHD conversation has gone
we've
1,000 different directions.
Still connected to me.
Well, I mean, as much as we're trying to keep it there. Let me ask you a couple quick questions here about cannabis and about your relationship with cannabis. What would you say is your favorite strain?
I'm a huge fan of anything with Girl Scouts cookies in it, or just Girl Scout cookies in general.
Girl Scout cookies. That's a good classic. It's a good classic strain. Been around a long time.
It helps. Like, is it a hybrid or?
Yeah, it's a sativa based hybrid. Typically, it's a sativa heavy hybrid.
And so I use it all for everything, really, because most of my things that affect my ability to do things is my chronic illnesses. And so when I smoke it, my joints are better, my head isn't killing me,
right.
I'm just feeling so much better all around. But then when I need to go to bed, I can still smoke it and I'm able to sleep most of the night. And so
it's a good all-around strain.
It's an all-around strain that really I prefer personally because it's good rounded. It's
one that we always look for. I would suggest trying it if you haven't yet. Go out and find your closest dispensary. See if you can find some Girl Scout cookies.
Plain Girl Scout cookies is hard to find nowadays.
It is.
Which sucks.
It is.
It sucks.
But if you can find your hybrid strains or things like that crossed with Girl Scout cookies, they're typically going to be a better one anyways. At least that's what I've experienced. A couple
weeks ago, we had that strain that was crossed with Girl Scout cookies. But it was good. Even though it was crossed with something, I still try to find it because it's still going to have some of the same effects that the original strain would have.
Well, not to mention, typically when you're crossing those, you're going to cross them with similar strains.
Yeah.
Right? It's not like I'm going to take a sativa and an indica and put them together. Because, you can, but it's not necessarily... 6 of one, half a dozen the other.
Yeah.
You can do it. Obviously, it happens. It works. That's how you get hybrids. But in my opinion, I'm more of a purist, or purist. I like to give me my pure strains, like my old classic ones, right? Give me my Afghan Kush, give me my green crack, give me my lemon haze, right? Like, give me my classic strains. I'm a big classic fan. Don't get me wrong.
When we go to the store, he picks the basic stuff. When I go to the store, I pick the mixed stuff or just something new that we haven't tried, and generally, I don't even know what it is.
Yeah.
So he gets the pure strange. I usually get the mixed ones because
As long as I can, I prefer them that way, right? I mean, that's personal preference, I guess. Maybe I'm just an elitist.
you're just a baby. You're just picky. He's just picky. He calls me picky.
I like what I like, and I know what I like. Is that a problem? I don't
That's
think
like
so.
me with concentrates, though. So
That's right.
I can't really say anything.
So I do have another question, though.
Or fly in your cup.
No, not this time. Thank God. If y'all didn't know, we live on a farm, and we're in fly season. It's really bad, and it's starting to get cold outside, so now all the flies that are out by the animals are starting to come inside, so now we have a lot of them inside.
Yeah.
And it's really annoying. So if you ever see us swatting away flies, you can tell there's a lot of them.
And just know that we raid pretty much every night before we go to bed.
Mm-hmm. It's bad. Then you get stable flies. If you don't know what stable flies are, they look like black flies, like they look like house flies, but they got a little stinger, and they bite, and they're typically available around animals. We raise goats, so we got stable flies. They're annoying. Just saying, putting that out there.
And we get butcher scraps and bones from a guy in town for our dogs. And so that is out by the animals too. But they're all like, yeah, it's warm. Let's come to the house.
Yeah, so now they're all coming inside. I'll tell you, it's not great.
No.
It's not great. If anyone can give me any secrets on how to keep them down, throw them in the comments. Let me know. I would love to know ways to keep the flies down.
Yeah, I'd love to know too, because
there's a lot of them.
Oh, I'm tired of raiding every night.
Yeah, absolutely. So we have been chatting now for about 40 minutes. It's been a good chat so far. Before we end up here and finish off, let me ask you one final question. If you had any advice for anyone on the fence about whether to try cannabis or not, or if you had any advice for not the average user, so like the casual user, things like that, what advice would you give them to either take a dive into the culture, at least for the little bit, or maybe look into researching cannabis a little bit more? What advice would you give the average user?
Well, just be open to trying different things, because it's going to affect you differently, everything. But also do that slowly, because if you're just used to smoking flower, when you go to have like an edible or a concentrate or a pendulum in there, it's a lot different than flower because it's a lot more concentrated. So you're more likely to green out, and that scares people. When you green out, it scares the crap out of people, and then they don't want to try anything new. They don't want to try it new because they had a bad experience.
Yep.
Because they weren't properly educated about it.
And for those who don't know, greening out is the statement used for those who overconsume cannabis. It brings you to a point of nausea, typically, vomiting, dizziness.
This is what people consider an overdose.
Right. Since the toxic limit of cannabis is so astronomically high, this would be what you would consider a bad trip.
Yeah.
You typically feel nauseous. You typically end up vomiting. The room might spin. You
don't want to smoke for the rest of the night. And you never want to try it again.
It's like being super drunk, but not like slurring your words and like tripping over yourself and like that kind of dizzy.
He knows this, and then you usually fall asleep. Do you want to tell him why you know this?
What are you talking about?
Mr. Greened Out on your first time of Reclaim?
What are you talking about?
It was super funny. It was so funny. He was even on stream, which was great. Because I had to, like, wake him up and stop it. Or he stopped it. Because he's like, I'm not feeling good. And he put his head down on the desk and laid there and fell asleep for, like, half an hour. And when he woke up, he had a big line across his head from the desk. And that's at the point where he was like, I took way too much. Because You don't remember this because you greened out. Literally, like, I'm not even kidding you. I laughed. And then when I went to go take mine was like just a little bit because I was like, I'm not doing that. And you were all like, I'm a boss.
I don't remember that. And
It
I'm
was pretty
insulted
funny.
and embarrassed if it's true.
It is so true and so funny because I've never seen him green out, like, ever. And this is what can happen when you go from smoking stuff normally that you do to switching to something new. Like, reclaim is a lot harsher. And so you go digging into it like he did, like we did, and he greened out. Because he was just like, I'm a pro, it doesn't matter. But even being a pro, sometimes things still happen. But can't be scared to try it again. And just know that at that time, you tried way too much. And then,
I was just going to say the best advice, you did mention the best advice, which is I would always suggest to people is to start slow. Start on a low dose, start on a small amount, wait until you feel something. If you're trying edibles, for example, take a small bite, take your edible, cut it in quarters, take a quarter, wait half an hour. If you don't feel anything, take another quarter. It's like seasoning a soup, right? You can't take the seasoning out once you've put it in. Okay? You cannot take the THC out once you've put it in.
Yeah.
So take it slowly. And if you're moving from flower to concentrates, again, take it slow. Small dabs are better. Small pulls are better. Don't try to, strongman it.
Or, like, don't try and do, like, a gram hoop because you're trying to upshow your buddy.
Unless you're comfortable with that, unless you know that you're going to end up in a bad case, unless you're prepared to meet aliens, like, don't try to strong arm the stuff. It is quite cerebral. Let's be real.
So
let's be real.
Everything and anything. Like, don't just go in and pick something random and be like, I want to try this. I've never tried it before. No, go in, ask your bud tender, be like, hey, I'm new. I want to try something new. What do you suggest? And when you say you're new to something, if they're a good bud tender, they'll point you in the direction of stuff that is going to be easier for you to, like, veer into or merge into trying different things. Because if they're a proper bud tender, they're not going to give you something that is more for someone like us.
I would hope not. And
I would hope that's what I said. If it's a good bud tender,
this is where I have to segue into the fact that right now, especially in Canada, the average bud tender is pretty dumb. They're working a job selling weed. They don't know much about it. You're not gonna. The average bud tender isn't like me, where they're hyper focusing about, the strains and the specifics and things like that. They're not like me.
Because they're trying to make sure that when someone comes in, they're getting something that's appropriate for them.
That's what they should be doing.
And so that's what they need. They need to have a course of some sort to educate themselves, so that when people come in to try new things, it's not as hard to figure out because they understand what terpenes are, CBNAs or CBD or whatever they are. I don't know all of the terms, and I'm sure throughout this podcast I'll learn. So just bear with me. I'm not like him. I just smoke the stuff.
That's right.
I just smoke the stuff.
That's right.
But they need
as you can see, the head size
is
mine's full of cannabis stuff. Hers is full of not cannabis stuff.
I don't even know what it's full of. It's so deep. I can never say the word. But yeah, don't jump in head first. Really don't, because like
get a good friend who knows how to help you.
Yeah, like, don't go and try and show up your friends because you think you're boss. Don't go and be like, oh, I don't feel anything. I'm gonna eat 3 more instead of the other half.
Yeah.
Don't do that. Or, oh, hey, my buddy did a blinker. I'm going to try and do that too, but I've never smoked a vape pen. No.
And remember when it comes to edibles.
Because it's going to burn your throat.
Let me just say one thing. When it comes to edibles, okay, that stone lasts so much longer. You need to be careful.
Yeah.
Edibles, to me, is one of the something you need to be most cautious of, because it's like the slipperiest slope. because it takes half an hour to 45 minutes, maybe even longer, to feel the effects. But then that effect lasts for a lot longer. A body high on edibles can last 6 to 8 to 12 hours.
Yeah.
Whereas smoking it typically lasts 1 to 2 to 3 hours at most.
That's why you have to be very aware of what you're doing when you take them, how experienced you are with them.
Yeah, there's a huge difference between a body high versus a brain high.
Yeah.
And you need to be cautious of that. So that's why I always suggest, and I will agree with you, that is a great advice, start low, start slow, stay from there.
Yeah.
Right?
And like, if you don't want to, you try the half and you're like, oh, I didn't feel anything, and you want to try it right away, another one, go hard. But if you don't, try the next day and just try, instead of a half, try 3/4.
Mm-hmm.
And see if that goes, because sometimes if you just keep piling it on, you don't actually know what your body can handle, because it's still processing everything.
Yeah.
And sometimes some of them takes longer to kick in than others.
Because you might expect to feel the effects after half an hour, but it might not trigger for an hour and a half.
Yeah.
So you, after a half an hour, take another quarter, and another half an hour, now you've taken another quarter because you haven't felt anything. But you're not going to feel the first quarter until the next half an hour, at which point you're going to start to feel it, and then
all the
now
other
you're going to get
gonna
cascaded by the
it.
rest.
Yeah.
So you need to be careful.
That. And
careful,
don't do that unless you're prepared to deal with the consequences of your actions. Like, I'm not even kidding you.
Unless you're prepared to go out at 3 o'clock in the morning and pick up 17 burgers from McDonald's.
Like, the one day, I hadn't really had edibles a lot, and I made some, and I wanted to try them. Like, we always test them to make sure. Because we only make them for our friends. Like, for special occasions kind of thing. And I had one, and I wasn't feeling anything, and, so I had another one, because, why not? And I kid you not, I was vibrating, I was having an anxiety attack, like, it was bad. He had to help calm me down because, like, my body couldn't do it.
Mm-hmm.
And I was dumb, and I didn't wait for the first brownie to kick in.
You need to start slow. Now, I'm not sitting here ragging on it and saying that it's all bad, because trust me, some people have amazing fits on edibles and love the chance on edibles. I know a lot of guys, when I was working in the industry, back when I was working in the store, they would come in specifically for edibles to help them golf or help them fish or help them hunt, things like that.
Yeah.
And that's totally understandable and acceptable. But again, it just comes down to going slow until you understand your dose. Once you understand what your dose is, you can start to experiment from there a lot more casually.
Yeah, a lot more in the variant of the doses for different
absolutely.
periods in time for when you want to take it.
Mm-hmm.
Because, like you said, it's going to last like 6 hours usually, minimum.
Yeah, it's like 6 to 12 hours on edibles, depending.
Depending on your metabolism, obviously. Yep. Right? But we've seen so many people just jump in head first into new things, and it never ends well.
Well,
when that time happened, I never ate edibles up until you started working at the shop again.
Yeah.
And you got the wild gummies.
Yeah.
And I tried them again, but I slowed easily into them.
Yeah.
I didn't go, I'm going to take 4. I took 1, and I did that for like a week or something like that. I only took like 1 a day. And then I went up 1. And that's where I found that 2 of these little gummies works perfect for me. But I didn't go head first into it like I did the first
step
time.
at a time.
Right? It was a lot easier because he also understood the ingredients more. And it was a more controlled dosage as well.
That's the one good thing I give for the legal market, especially when it comes to edibles. You know what your edibles are going to be.
Yeah. The percentage.
Right? You know what they're going to be. The tough part about the illegal market, when it comes to edibles for me, is that you don't know what those percentages are. You don't know what the actual concoction is. You're trusting them to be honest. And I don't know about you guys, but trusting drug dealers is typically 1/6, you know what I mean? Like, you trust them as far as you can throw them. But I know some pretty big drug dealers, so like, you can't throw them very far. You know what I'm saying? I'm sure you get what I'm saying. Yeah, you get what I'm saying.
But as the podcast goes, we'll talk more about the different products and how it can affect you, because I don't know much about it. So he can educate me and you, and we can all learn something. Because at the end of the day, it's better to try new things slowly and understand the stuff that you're getting, and not just going in and being like, hey, I want the highest THC thing. Because that's not...
Well, that's the whole purpose of the podcast, is to educate people on what this is, how it should be used, what its internal, like what its presence should be in our lives, and how impactful it can be.
Yeah, because like even different terpenes affect you differently, things like that. So we're
and
talk about
it's
that.
all natural stuff that we've been dealing with in all these other foods and all these other things that we deal with already. So it's not like it's something that's specific to just cannabis. Like I said, our body has an endocannabinoid system. Terpenes are naturally found throughout the rest of the world. That's what gives things in their scents, their tastes, things like that.
And I'm going to tell you now, for any mom who's breastfeeding, you're full of cannabinoids. That's why your baby sleeps. Is because the milk is filled with the stuff that's in your system to help them sleep. Because you naturally produce it. And it's not bad. It's not going to do anything wrong. Talk to doctors about it. They were the actually ones that told me, because my youngest was losing weight. And we were having... She let me know that. And so there's natural producing things in your system. So if your mom didn't take it while you're breastfeeding or while you're pregnant, just know that. Saying any of that. Just know that your body produces some of the natural things. So after you're done something like that and you want to try something closer to what your system it produces naturally, it can help ease your way into different things.
What that means is, don't feel bad. Okay? Don't feel bad. Don't think that you are less of a human being because you consume cannabis to help you out throughout.
Yeah.
Right? There are tons and tons and tons of benefits and reasons why we use it, both externally and internally. It's got tons of spirituality. It's got tons of cultural connections. It's got tons of like humanity connections. It's a basis for life.
There just needs to be more research done on it too.
Yep.
Like there's a girl her I didn't even say that. You want to say the word?
Endocannabinoid
system doesn't work proper, and so she can't go in the sun, she can't do certain things, she's always lethargic, and they figured that out when they were trying to find out what she had, and so they've started introducing it into her system so that her body again can produce those things, because it helps all of your body.
I would like to know what this is about.
I'll find it and send it to you.
Well, you'll have to, because then we can post it in the comments.
Yeah, I'll find it again, because it was crazy. It was on a cannabis... I'll find it. And I was just shocked because her cannabinoid system wasn't working proper, and it affected her life in a huge way. So never feel bad about using it, because your system might need it.
Not to mention, it's natural. Now, granted, there's a lot of things that are natural that are like, cyanide is natural too. I get it. Ha 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 ha. But cannabis doesn't kill. The literal overdosage of cannabis is it's so astronomically high.
You'll throw up before
you'll fall asleep first.
Yeah.
It's physically impossible to overdose enough to kill yourself with cannabis.
Or you'll eat a whole tray of macaroni and cheese.
Don't remind us. Yes, we did that. But that's again, consequences to the actions. You know what I mean? Like you know that you're gonna get high. You know you're gonna make some tasty mac and cheese.
Yeah.
You know you're gonna eat it. I think that's just.
And I was hungry. And I hadn't eaten all day, and my body was just like, when I was at that point, this is what I wanted, this is what I needed, and my body needed it now.
And we ate a tray of
macaroni and cheese.
And it was delicious. And I don't regret it for a moment.
I've eaten a whole cake to myself.
Don't rub that one in either. Anyways, ladies and gentlemen, that is going to wrap it up for today. We have been chatting now for well over an hour. It has been a good time. I hope you guys know more about my missus. She is my special person. She is the one that allows me to be me and pushes me to be better. So I hope you find someone like that in your life. And if you have one, make sure that you reach out to thcemporium.ca and get them a Mrs. T-shirt
or hoodie.
As well as the Highguy merch that's there as well.
3 different images for the Highguy.
Three different options. So go ahead and get your images out there. If you're getting this on YouTube, if you are waiting until the 20th to catch the video version on YouTube, feel free to like, subscribe, and share the stream, with your friends. And don't forget to comment down below if you have any questions or concerns or anything like that you'd like to reach out to know about us directly. Other than that, folks, if you're getting this on the podcast, don't forget to check us out every single week. We are going to start putting out weekly podcasts in order to help...
there you go. Weekly podcast. You know who you are.
Yeah.
Hold them to it.
We're going to start putting out weekly podcasts. We'll start recording them on Monday, and I will have them posted by Wednesday every single week, which allows us a ton of time to be able to prep for the next week.
Yeah.
I
gotta learn a little bit before the show. I need to come in with a little bit of knowledge.
That being said, folks, I do appreciate you for taking the time. If you are catching this on Apple Podcast or Spotify, thank you very, very much for searching for us. Obviously, as a new podcast, we are trying to get out there as best we can. But that is it, folks. I appreciate you so much. Kayla as well, thank you very much for joining us. But as you all know, love, peace, chicken grease, and until next time...
Lifted?
Stay lifted.